plan. So the first thing that you want to do is standardize your naming conventions. And you'll notice free text fields is crossed out there. Why? You want to avoid free text fields whenever possible. Free text fields, if you're not sure what they are when people can manually enter the data into a field instead of having a drop-down or a multi-select field. So actually, a few weeks ago, I was a victim to this. I was looking for customers who use a particular product that we sell, and the company name starts with an acronym. It's overall just an odd name because it's all lowercase letters. There's weird apostrophes and things throughout it. It's kind of a difficult one to deal with. So right there, it's a candidate for errors. And what I found was the data that the CRM returned to me was really only half right, because before we implemented the drop-down replacement for that product, people had been entering their own descriptors. So their interpretations ranged all over the board, from some people would write the name in all caps, some people would exclude the apostrophe, some people would only write the first 3 letters of the product name. So it was a free-for-all, and that was definitely a red light for why free text fields are the best to avoid whenever possible. As I mentioned, we now have a drop-down in there, which made it a lot easier. But I mean, that's just reflecting that they increase the likelihood of data entry errors. So anytime that you can replace a free text field with a drop-down menu or a multi-select field, do it. Okay, so then when it comes to abbreviations, you want to be selective about which words you're going to abbreviate, and you want to keep that consistent across the board. So for example, Technology Advisors, Inc., what are we going to do with that in the CRM? Are we going to capitalize I, capital N, capital C? Are we going to make it all lowercase with a period at the end? If you're a writer or you're familiar with style books like AP style, similar concept. Everyone has to adhere to the abbreviation style that you select. Spelling out numbers is a best practice to avoid errors and create consistency. So consider that as an option for your data management playbook. So as example, instead of the number 3 for 3rd Street, you would write out THIRD, 3rd Street. Indefinite and definite articles, they can sometimes muddy the waters. Sometimes it's not an issue, but I've seen it happen. It can muddy the waters at times. So one best practice you want to consider for that is either leave them out completely or move them to the end of the record name. So in the example I have here, we're showing that you could write the Blues Brothers as Blues Brothers, but what I didn't show there is that you could also write it as Blues Brothers the. And then punctuation, best practice, avoid it. Putting punctuation in the wrong place is going to affect the quality of your data. So, if you're typing USA and you don't put the dots in between, everyone's still going to know it means United States of America. So just if you don't need it, if you don't absolutely need the punctuation, recommend leaving that out, just making it easier on yourselves. Okay, so then creating data entry and deduplication rules. So in all likelihood, you have some duplicate data in your system. If you're not sure if a record is a duplicate, that's where we go back to asking the record owner, making sure that, is it possible that we have 2 companies with similar names? We don't want to accidentally delete something that we shouldn't be deleting. So best practice for dealing with duplicate data is to merge those records again, instead of deleting, to make sure you're not losing that valuable info. And I can't stress that enough. Workflow rules. Oh, sorry, I skipped one, didn't I? Okay, so required fields. Many of you probably are aware of required fields already if you are a CRM admin or if you've joined any of our user groups where our CRM experts have mentioned this a couple times. Basically, the admin can indicate required fields to be entered before a record can be saved. So if you go back to your list of your most valuable data assets, you want to look at those and say, are any of these currently not required? And if not, is this something that we want to make a mandatory field? And that's a conversation that you can have with your team. And again, that goes back to the whole prioritizing. If something's in your top 3 of most important data asset to your business and you're not requiring that to be entered into your CRM, there's an issue right there. Workflow rules. So workflow rules have pros and cons. A pro is it's less frustrating for the end users. The workflow can automatically update a field to match your preferred nomenclature. So for example, if somebody does enter the U.S.A for USA and you just want capital U, capital S, capital A, the workflow could autocorrect that. The issue happens sometimes when you get kicked back an unexpected iteration of the piece of data. So, that's just something that you should keep an eye on when you institute the workflow. And that's also something that the designated enforcer of your data management plan should be looking for is, okay, we have this workflow set up to autocorrect this information. I'm doing my 1-month analysis of what's been going on, and I'm going to look at that and make sure that it's working and functioning as it should be. And then validation rules. Those are a little bit stricter than the workflow rules. That's going to enforce the data entry formats that you are establishing with your data management. So that's when you've probably encountered that before, when you've tried to enter information into your CRM and you get an error message if you try to save the data incorrectly. So one of the common things you'll see is if you're entering a phone number and you only put 6 digits in there, the system physically won't let you save it until it's corrected. So that's one way to really gain control over the way that people are entering data and force them to standardize those naming conventions. Okay, and then last but not least on the slide, documenting what you did. So once your data management rules are established, you create the documentation and then you share that with the team. The documentation should include the rules for the naming conventions, the data entry, protocols if there's deduplication. Again, we're thinking of this like a style guide for our database. And I would recommend keeping it in a shared place. Like at our company, we use a shared drive where we can all see and have access to certain documents. And that's a really great time saver if, let's say, one of your policies changes or one piece of data becomes more important than another and you change how that is used in the CRM. You can edit that and know that everyone has the most up-to-date version of your data management plan. I mean, you can make static versions as well if you prefer, but we definitely recommend having it in a shared place that updates in real time over anything static.